Well, the government has firmly responded to allegations made by opposition MPs that their iPhones were being spied on by government authorities. This is after an alert was sent out by Apple which stated that state-sponsored actors may have had a role in this, but Apple has refused to attribute any of the alerts to specific state-sponsored actors or attackers. Apple has said that alerts have been sent to individuals in 150 countries, but is unable to provide specific information on the threat notifications. Now, news of this comes at a time when there's a major international effort on to understand the dangers and the opportunities of artificial intelligence. In fact, this is something which I wanted to speak to the Minister Rajeev Chandrasekhar about. He does join us now. So we look certainly at artificial intelligence, but also on this major news development which has taken place on Apple. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us. Now, the key point made by opposition MPs is that even if there were, who knows, dodgy algorithms at work in Apple, why is it that only opposition MPs have been targeted? How would you respond to that?
No, that's factually untrue, Vishnu. A gentleman, Samir Saran, who is not a member of parliament at all by any stretch of imagination, has got that notification. So I think it is, and Apple has seemingly put out that people from many countries have seemed to have got this notification over the last 24 hours or 48 hours. So I think this is more a question that Apple should answer because, as we have said today, my colleague Ashwini Vaishnav has said, and I have said, this is something that Apple, who have always stressed that their platforms are secure, designed for privacy, etc., they must explain whether their platforms and devices are really secure or not. Because if they are secure and this is a false alarm, or if they are not secure and this is something real, then they have to explain what this is and what is the so-called state actor that they are notifying. So either way, I think there is a need for an investigation, which is what Mr. Vaishnav has said in the press conference. I'm unfortunately not in Delhi today. And I think there is a certain need because this is a government that takes the business and the duty of privacy of our citizens very seriously. We are the ones who brought the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. The Supreme Court found that privacy is a fundamental right when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji was Prime Minister in 2017. So we think Apple has to answer a number of questions about these devices that they claim are secure, to whether they are secure or not. And if they are not secure, then we have a different kind of a problem. But if they are secure and these notifications are going out and alarming people, and the phraseology, the verbiage that the notification implies that there are some state actors. Who are these state actors? Are they state actors within India? Are they state actors outside the country? Is there some effort to try and disrupt the India-Apple relationship? So there are several questions that arise naturally from what we have heard in the last 24 hours. And that I think a lot of that has to do with Apple explaining what is really going on, because they've been, in their reply, in my opinion, slightly vague.
Bottom line, since you will be speaking to Apple, I'm sure the government is, would it be correct to say that the government of India has no role whatsoever in spying on opposition leaders? I just wanted a clear statement from you, given the allegations that we've been seeing on Twitter.
Look, 100,000%. This was said even during those meaningless allegations in the past. As we are getting closer to election, we understand it's political season and people will pull out things out of their hat, imaginary and even more imaginary, as bizarre as they can get. But this is a government that takes the business and the duty of protecting the rights of citizens, all citizens, including those in the opposition and those who are not in the opposition. The right to privacy is a fundamental right, and we take that duty very seriously. And, when we've legislated in a very clear manner about what that means to citizens, a fundamental right to privacy in terms of data protection. And that applies to all platforms, whether they are Apple or, the social media platforms. We've made it very clear. And this is an issue, certainly, for a platform that claims to be secure, a platform and a manufacturer that claims that its devices are designed for privacy. They are the ones who have to answer what they, is their platform really compromisable? Whether it is a state actor within or outside the country, it is for Apple to explain whether this is really possible, and if so, who is doing it or what is done. there is, I mean, in the press note that Apple has put out, which I've just seen as I landed here I'm here to attend the AI Safety Summit. The press note starts with a statement that says that there is no evidence of any state-sponsored actors, or there's no evidence. That's the first sentence. And then they go on to say usual corporate language about A, B, C, D, F, G, and so on and so forth. And I still think that they need to be much clearer about what that notification really means, because they are the ones sending that notification. In my opinion, there are only two scenarios. Either their platform is compromised and therefore they've sent a notification, or the platform is secure and that notification was sent by their own language. It could be false and it could be, unreliable. So they've said that in their own website, that it is possible that these notifications are false. So either way, they have to take this position, whether the platform is compromised, in which case the investigation will throw up where the platform is compromised and what kind of compromised weaknesses they have in the platform. But if what they have been saying is true, that they are designing their phones, designed for privacy, these are secure platforms, then they must explain what this notification really means and why people all across the spectrum, including in many countries, are getting this notification.
One of the points that Apple did actually say was that the reason they cannot identify a particular actor is that it would potentially give the actors information to change their behavior or their patterns. So the information is incomplete, Vishnu, but there's a reason for it. Is the suggestion?
Yeah, look, Vishnu, we've seen a pattern with these big tech companies in the past, where when there is a need for an absolute clear response to a situation, that there is a little bit of this obfuscation. We've seen this in the past with social media platforms, and this certainly is not an acceptable response from a big responsible company like Apple, and certainly a company that we consider a partner with India in terms of how they are investing in manufacturing and growing and creating jobs and so on and so forth. So I think Apple is the one that needs to answer this question about really is their platform secure, and hundreds and thousands of Indians are using it, hundreds and millions of people around the world are using it. Is the device really secure, and does it really protect the user and users' information and users' privacy as they claim it does? If it does, then there is the issue that they say that this could be a fake and unreliable threat notification. Then that goes into play. If it is not, if the first part of it is not, that there is some vulnerability, then it is important that we understand what the vulnerability about. And I must point out to you that CERT, an organization in MeitY, Vishnu, in October of this year, October of 2022 rather, have pointed out many vulnerabilities in the iOS and have pointed out about 3 CVEs, as I recall, through an official advisory to Apple. So it is for Apple to clarify. And I can certainly tell you that all of these conspiracy theories that come up, that there is some, government hand in it, and there is some dark dungeon where people are plotting these things, certainly is as far from the truth as is possible.
The other thing which has happened of late in terms of leaks is allegations that perhaps Aadhaar data is not as secure. Some reports suggesting that some Aadhaar details have been leaked, in fact, considerable volumes of it. Telephone numbers, people, those who've had their COVID vaccinations, and therefore some data attached to people. What has happened over there? Is it true?
Look, during the consultations on the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, I was asked, and even after the bill was enacted and it became an act, there was this conversation and discussion and consultation about what should be the transition period. And I said then, and I say today, that it is very clear that in the government ecosystem, and that the government ecosystem is a huge ecosystem that consists of central government, ministries, departments, state government departments and ministries, where there is a lot of data that has been collected, legacy data over the years, which peaked during COVID, that there is a lot of time that is going to be required for government to transition in an orderly, non-disruptive manner to being a responsible trustee and keeper of citizens' data. And I am still not privy to the exact details. I only understand that it's some leak or a breach, alleged leak or a breach from. I think we have to recognize that the government ecosystem will take a little longer to transition to this absolutely bulletproof ecosystem which manages to the data and keep it, because we are now talking about legacy data that has been collected over several years and several almost decades in many cases. In many cases there are data that are being digitized and being made machine readable as the digitization process is going on. So I think it is certainly not something that I'm very happy about, and I'm sure CERT is investigating it as is the mandate. But it is something that we must accept will take a little bit of time for the government ecosystem. And by the way, this applies to the MSMEs and small businesses in the country as well, who are also custodians of large amounts of consumer and citizen data, that they will take a bit of time to adjust to this new framework, this new paradigm, if you want to call it that, where there is a lot more responsibility and accountability about how they collect, store, and access data.
Do we have any idea of the extent of this leak?
No, I certainly don't, and I don't want to speculate. I think these are things that where there are institutional responses. CERT is the institution that always swings into action and investigates it, understands what is being leaked, where it's being leaked, what has caused the vulnerability. Is it a hack? Is it a system and operating procedure vulnerability? So they are the ones who swing into action for that. And I think I will just wait till they decide to submit the report and when they submit the report.
Now, Minister, you're in the United Kingdom, as I understand it, at a time when the US President, in fact, just overnight for us here in India, issued a new executive order to ensure that AI, artificial intelligence, doesn't do public harm. Do you believe that developers who do pose a potential risk must share the results of safety tests with the government? Now, America wants their industry to do this. Do you want Indian developers to do something like this as well?
So one of the things, Vishnu, that I would certainly like to draw your attention to is that the wording. First of all, I welcome what President Biden and the U.S. government has done. I think this is in the wake of the historic MOU between the U.S. and India when Honorable Prime Minister visited the U.S., where the U.S. and India have agreed to collaborate in AI and in semiconductor and in high performance computing and in quantum computing. So AI is certainly an area where India and the US are going to work very closely together. And I think our basic principles in how we view the internet and in general and tech in particular, tech in general and internet and AI in particular is similar, because we have been saying for almost now 24 months that our policies and our approach to regulation is about safety and trust and accountability, safety and trust of our digital nagriks and accountability of all the platforms that serve our digital nagriks. And that is exactly the language that we have used for the last 24, 30 months. And it is good to see that now the US is essentially talking about safety and trust and accountability, albeit they, one or two words may be different, but effectively they're talking about safety and trust of the users. And I think that convergence of the leading nations of the world and leading tech nations of the world around making the consumer or the user's safety being the primary public policy objective for any tech policy making is a good forward step. Now, in my opinion, different countries will approach this differently in terms of whether there will be disclosure of risks from platforms, or there is a need for sandboxing platforms and having sandboxes validate some technologies in AI before it is actually made commercially available to a mass market. Or in our case, as India is proposing, and we will certainly strongly propose it in tomorrow's discussion here in the UK, is that we think we need to create an overall framework of user harm, which is the reciprocal of safety and trust. What kinds of user harm are not permitted by any platform, whether that's an AI platform, whether it's a consumer tech platform, whether it's a social media platform, that we start regulating the internet in general and AI in particular through the prism of the safety and trust of those who use it. Because, when we talk about AI, Vishnu, and I'm sorry, I'm going to ramble on this a little bit.
Please do. It's fascinating.
AI is a technology that is going to enable us to do more with less. So do more good with less. We will certainly become a force multiplier and a kinetic enabler of a digital economy. That is the good news. But the same principle applies to the bad and the harm, which is that AI will be able to amplify and compound in very significant manners the harm and the criminality elements of the internet as we know today.
But it's not
If
just.
we think we are worried about
But Rajeev, it's
misinformation
not
today,
just the internet, because the risks, for
no, no,
example, of
AI
AI and chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, cyber security risks. This is
yeah,
again something
look,
that
at the
Biden
end of
speaks
the day,
about. So again,
yeah, at the
international
end of the day,
standards, how
yeah,
important
yeah.
are they to protect people
No, no,
not just in India, but everywhere?
Yeah, please understand, at the end of the day, AI is going to be sitting on the internet. AI is not sitting in a room
Sure.
unconnected. It is essentially an application. AI is a layer that is effectively an application that sits on the internet, and consumers consume the model, they use the model, whether it's a foundational model or it's any other application that sits on a model that the consumers use for whatever purposes, for search, for modeling, for predictive analysis, whatever. But so what I'm saying is that the consumer sees this as yet another application on the internet, and therefore safety and trust of the consumer who's accessing this application, and it may be an application that has underlying embedded in it AI and models and or algorithms or different levels, that we have to focus on safety and trust as almost a principle. And I say this because our experience with all of what we have progressed in the area of tech and internet has been that regulation has lagged innovation, and innovation has gotten away so ahead that it's now absolutely the toxicity on the overall tech ecosystem is very, very difficult to regulate, and governments are just failing and unable to do so. So AI, we should not do that. I think this is an important summit where at least countries are coming together and agreeing, or at least starting to agree on the basic principles. And I think for India, being the largest connected country in the world, the largest digital economy by far, leaving aside the North America and in parts of Western Europe, but we are certainly going to be one of the largest digital economies by 25, 26. We have a lot of interest in helping AI being shaped in a manner that is net accretive to our digital economy and not causing harms and the other distractions of risk that will just make the potential of AI, a break be potential of AI by over-regulation.
But let me ask you about, in a sense, the bull in a China shop, AI and sentience. Do you believe that we are getting to a stage when artificial intelligence is able to think for itself and is getting to a stage when that represents a threat?
Look, it's clear that everybody has a view on how fast AI will progress towards mimicking human behavior, towards inferential, true AGI. Artificial general intelligence is the holy grail of AI that people have been predicting for the last 3 decades. When I did my master's thesis, we talked about AI, and even those days, when I was young and I had dark hair and I was not such an old grizzled veteran, we were talking about AGI. And certainly we can argue that the last 10 years, the intensity and the acceleration and the curve has become a lot more exponential in terms of the progress. But whether we will be there the next 2 years, whether we'll be there next 5 years, I'm not certainly a person who wants to predict the future of tech in terms of how it will grow and expand. But we can safely predict that in our lifetimes, we will see AGI, we will see AI mimicking human behavior. We will see inferential AI in our lifetime. Now, whether that is 5 years from now,
Asimov basically got it right all along, right? We both grew up reading Isaac Asimov. He certainly seems to have gotten it right.
Absolutely.
What a thinker he was.
And I think a lot of these people were prescient. They saw it 40 years ago that at some point machine intelligence and learning, human intelligence will be mimicked by machines. And I think a critical mass and an inflection point has been reached with the power of the GPUs and the AI compute and the training models that have now evolved, that we are able to train trillions of parameters and starting to mimic close to inferential behavior that human intelligence and human artificial intelligence of the AGI represents.
2 more questions. AI and job generation. How would you respond to people watching this program saying AI means I'm going to lose my job?
No, look, Vishnu, you know that at every stage of the industrial revolution, if you look at the history of progress of humankind, at every stage there will be a disruptive technology. The internet came and people said, "Oh, every business will close down, every retail showroom will close down, everybody will go to e-commerce." So I think there will always be this disruption, and I think what the disruption does is not so much throw people out of work as much as force people to. And I think in our case, the opportunity for us is that the next generation of youngsters coming out of colleges, coming out of schools, get the skills at the school and the college levels that prepare them to be so flexible and to be, to be so dynamic as these changes confront them. I think the days when you just get a degree after going to 4 years in college and then hoping and thinking that that will stand the course or test of time for the rest of your life is pretty much behind us. Sure. Not just in India, but the whole world. So what this does is essentially create a lot more opportunities, but a very different skill-intensive opportunities. There will be disruptions in the economic model and the market model as we know it, because like I said, AI is going to do more with less in many levels of functions and jobs. And that disruption is just normal. It is part of how humankind has progressed over the last several decades and centuries. I mean, when the locomotive came, the bullock carts went out of action. When the PC came, the munshis used to write down and count in companies went out of action. So this is, I think, we must not fear it. We must embrace it, but we must certainly anticipate what it requires of us. To go with the change and to ride the change rather than be disrupted by the change.
What guarantee, and this is my final question, is there that all countries will comply with AI standards? Because if there isn't unanimity on this, then it represents technology in the hands of some and not in the hands of others. It potentially represents the weaponization of AI in the future. This is something we both look at very closely as a matter of interest.
So I think there's no guarantees, Vishnu, there's no guarantees that there will be no outliers who say we can do this on our own, we will do this on our own. But I think most commonsensical thinking democratic countries, free societies understand from our own experience in the last 10 years that it is not enough to be techno-optimists about technology. It's not just always good to say that technology represents good, and forget to deal with the bad and the other issues of harm. So I think there is a certain maturity, I think, in governments around the world. There's a certain experience and experience and a maturity in terms of how they see the technology ecosystem, that they see this as being a force for good, but they see it also as requiring regulation and intervention to prevent the bad from, in a sense, overwhelming the good that this technology can deliver. And I think AI certainly, from what I'm hearing, and I read the nice article written by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak on NDTV.com, certainly it's good to see leaders of the Western world talking so clear-headedly about what is required by countries to do to ensure that this technology works for the good of mankind rather than just a good for a few billionaires and few big tech companies, and then have the rest of us scrambling to protect ourselves and protect our people.
Lord Rajeev Chandrasekhar, always wonderful talking to you, talking through ideas. AI and so much of it is all about ideas at this stage, the technology very much in the process of evolution. But also thank you very much for those direct answers on this news story, which is broken as far as Apple is concerned.